Welcome to Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston, PhD. Glenn has held his doctorate in psychology for more than 30 years and is also a former multi-million-dollar consultant to the big food industry and uses his experience to help you defeat your cravings. This show will help you to focus on dramatically reducing cravings and leave the diet mentality behind, so you can more easily and effortlessly achieve your health, fitness, and body composition goals. Please remember, no doctor-patient relationship is created via this show, and you are responsible for confirming any changes to your diet, health, or psychological routines with an appropriately licensed professional before implementing them. Now, before we get started, if you haven't yet downloaded the free smartphone app to access dozens of these recordings all in one place, as well as to avail yourself of a confidential community for support, motivation, and assistance, please visit the podcast link on defeatyourcravings.com as soon as possible. And now, here's your host, Dr. Glenn Livingston.
This is the very good Dr. Glenn Livingston with defeatyourcravings.com, and I'm here with
Dr. Howie Jacobson of AskHowie.com.
Hello, Mr. Howie, Dr. Howie.
Yeah, how's it going?
What's going on?
I'm eager to hear what wisdom you're going to drop today.
All right. I've got an interesting bit of wisdom that I think is not common knowledge. And it stems from three quotes that are very related that drove me to a particular insight. The first one is something an old mentor of mine used to say, and he likes to stay anonymous, so I'm not going to give you his name. But I believe you when you tell me that you don't know, but what if you did know? It's something he would say to me when he'd ask me a question and I would say, I don't know. He'd say, I believe you, Glenn, when you tell me that you don't know, but what if you did know? And then Jack Trimpey, author of Rational Recovery, said, if you don't know, then nobody does. If you don't know, then no one does. And then I put that together and I said, I don't know is a pig squeal. For those of you who don't understand what a pig squeal is, it's a verbalization of your destructive self designed to stop you from following a constructive rule that you set for yourself, like I won't have chocolate during the week or something like that. And here's my explanation. Separation, which is the separation of your higher from your lower self, and refutation, which means the refutation of your lower self's argument for engaging in indulgence. Separation and refutation both require the mental muscle, which assigns words to the space between stimulus and response. It's necessary to exercise this muscle if you want to intervene in the automatic behavior loops underlying overeating. When you first examine a situation where you broke a food rule, it's perfectly natural not to know what excuses your pig might have said to get you to do it, nor the logical flaws within them. But if you allow your pig to get you to say, I don't know, and stop there, then you never will. And the bad habit will persist indefinitely because you're the only one in your head, you're the only one who could know. But take heart, you don't have to immediately know the answers. Instead, ask, what might the pig have said to get me to break my rules and binge? And what might be wrong with the logic in these squeals? Or what occurs to me about what the pig might have said? See, this is a game of speculation, not of right and wrong answers. You're not in a schoolroom and you won't be graded. You are exercising the muscle, the mental muscle, which is the ability to assign words to food impulses. And at first that muscle is very weak and perceived only faintly because the brain's natural tendency is to automate the acquisition of calories. But the more you practice, the better you get. I don't know prevents you from exercising this muscle and perpetuates the undesirable behavior. This is why I say I don't know is a pig squeal, which embraced stops all forward movement. Don't let the pig win with this sneaky strategy. You do know. You do. You only need to ask, what might it be, and speculate. So does that make sense, first of all? Is that well enough articulated? Because there are a couple of defeat your cravings concepts in there that aren't.
It does. I missed a couple of words at the very beginning when you said this, something before in the space between the stimulus and the response. Could you repeat like two sentences from before that?
Separation and refutation were the two words. Separation is the act of saying, I don't want that, my inner pig does, or I don't want that, my food monster does. So if I make a rule that says, I'll never have chocolate on a weekday, only on the weekends, and there's a voice in my head that says, you know what, Glenn, you can just start that rule tomorrow. A couple of bites are not going to hurt you. It'll be just as easy to start tomorrow. Separation is the act of saying, well, that's not me, that's my inner pig, because it's arguing for me to break the rule, which obviously I wanted to stick to, so obviously that's not me. It's kind of a game we play. I don't really think there's another entity in your head. But separation is the act of very clearly identifying that destructive thought and assigning it to that fictitious destructive entity that you define. Refutation is the act of refuting or disproving what it says. So it won't be just as easy to start tomorrow, because if I have a craving and I have the thought I'll just start tomorrow, and then I have the chocolate, I'll have reinforced the craving and the thought. So I'm more likely to think just start tomorrow, and I will be more likely to have a deeper craving for chocolate tomorrow. So the only time I can ever eat healthy is the present. Always use the present moment to be healthy. And if you're in a hole, stop digging. So that would be an example of refutation. And both of those mental activities require that you assign words to what must be going on between stimulus and response. So a lot of times people see the chocolate bar at the counter, they just buy it and go in the car and they unwrap the package and they eat it without even thinking. And it's almost like they wake up and they see the chocolate wrapper on the seat. Part of the way that we help people to overcome overeating is to kind of intervene in that automatic behavior and open up a space between the stimulus, which is the chocolate bar on the counter, and the response, which is eating the chocolate. We're trying to open up a space and generate some awareness. And we do that in part with words. We examine what happened. We say, well, since you made this commitment to not have chocolate during the week, that must have been important to you. Therefore, there must have been some type of justification that made it okay to just engage in this automatic behavior loop. What might that have been? And the process of assigning words there in and of itself gives you a little more control, because it's putting a little bit of time, a little more space between stimulus and response. And once you've assigned words, Pig says it'll be just as easy to start tomorrow, then you have the ability to examine the veracity of those words and refute them, prove them wrong. So that's separation and refutation. And they both require a willingness to speculate on what that justification might have been. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I love it.
Now you could tell me your thoughts.
I, too, coming out of the coaching community, have heard people use that, what if you did know? Sometimes it felt like the right question, and sometimes it felt like a provocation. And I think there's a bunch of different I don't knows. I think we have to be sort of discerning in what kind of I don't know it is. I have had clients where when they say I don't know, I could tell what they meant was I'm afraid to say it. I'm afraid to say it to you. I'm afraid to think it for myself because I don't like where this is going. What you're talking about is like, I'm totally flabbergasted and confused because there's this force inside me that keeps self-sabotaging, and I'm not even awake when it's happening, seemingly, right? Like a true bewilderment. I read something recently that I loved. It was talking about curiosity. And everybody loves curiosity, right? Curiosity is like this unadulterated virtue in our world. Like, it's not like what will happen if I stick my hand down this ant's nest, but like what will happen if this happens, or I wonder about that, or I don't know about this. And the point the person was making was that curiosity is really about embracing your ignorance, like acknowledging like, oh, there is a gap between what I know and what is, between what I know and what could be. And I think that's kind of what you're saying here, is that the not knowing in the past for people is typically a shame, not knowing. Like, I don't know what's going on. What's wrong with me? And what you're inviting people to do, first of all, you're normalizing the heck out of emotional eating and binging and the kinds of things that people are so ashamed of, right? You're explaining it through biology and psychology and marketing and all sorts of ways in which people can then say, oh, it's not me. It's the mismatch between my body and the current world. It's the mismatch between, a society that wants people's well-being versus a society that's predatory in many ways. Once we've depathologized our own urges and our own actions, to get really curious about it and say, boy, I really want to know what's going on under the hood here. The I don't know can be a squeal, or it can also be an invitation. Oh, I don't know. I don't have to know, but I can run experiments, right? I'm a scientist.
I love it. And you're right. I didn't articulate the necessity of depathologizing things in order to speculate. Because if you're ashamed of what could be, then there's a motivation for not knowing, right? And you have to, in some way, address the shame first. And I forget that the general context in which I operate is the assumption that this is not a flaw in your character. This is not a result of necessarily some deep psychological trauma, but the result of a mismatch between evolutionary biology and the modern food environment and the profit motive in big advertising and big food and all of the hyper-palatable food-like substances that are available to us. I make the assumption that everybody knows that 100,000 years ago, I don't think I would have a job. I don't think Thag was sitting around saying to Martha, "Oi, ate too much mammoth, ate too many blueberries." Most of the things people overeat on are a product of the modern food environment. That's just inherent in the thinking that I have.
Yeah. Here's your problem. You've elaborated on a system that's so effective and so powerful that I think you take for granted the power of that very first step of depathologizing. I've talked to people where I've coached them, and we have, just at the very beginning, I haven't given them any suggestions, any protocols, any rules, nothing's changed. But I've explained how their ancestors came over in a boat, and the ones who survived were the ones who could put on extra fat so they could survive lean times. And just that, the depathologizing of who they are and what they do, it can free up so much energy that now they have all this energy to be curious, to try things out. There's so much energy that goes into, I found, in people who have quote unquote eating disorders, in sort of numbing out not just whatever it was in their childhood that may have been triggering it, but the meta thoughts about the eating disorder, about the shame, about the fear, about the being out of control, about always having to be on hypervigilant alert in their environment against muggings by food. That once they can hear from someone credible like you, who explains it so well, that this is not a bug, this is a feature in any conceivable universe except this one, I think that already opens up so much healing. So I kind of want to encourage you to remember that first part that you've been talking about for so long that you might even take for granted is like the hugest step for a lot of people.
That's really helpful. That was not the expected outcome I thought would occur from this conversation today. That's really helpful. Before you can speculate, you need to depathologize. Before you can really do that, because if you're speculating in an environment of shame, then you're embarrassed to reveal even to yourself what the pig might have said, what those justifications might be. I think that the practical step still is that speculation. What might the pig have said? What occurs to me? What else might it have said? And why is it wrong? But in the original paid program that I put together, I had a really hard time getting people to participate the first couple of times I did it. And then I put this one slide in at the very beginning of the program, and I just confessed. I said, look, the reason that people don't participate in this program is shame. I came straight out and said, there's nothing you've done with food that I haven't done. Eaten it out of the garbage, gone through 7 different drive-thrus, tried to hide it, tried to throw it up. I couldn't actually get myself to do that, thank goodness. But there's no low to which you've sunk that I haven't sunk myself. And if I can get up here as a sophisticated psychologist and modestly famous, kind of like low-level famous person in the industry, and say, this is what I've done, then you don't have anything to be ashamed about. Once I did that, the participation opened up tremendously and everybody started speculating. I think that I missed that. I'm prone to just assuming there's nothing to be ashamed of. This is just a really nasty habit. It's a deep neurological groove and we got to get to work. And this is the work. Speculating is the work. So that's really helpful, Howie. Thank you.
Oh, pleasure. I mean, your work has influenced me so much. I think it's much easier to see the nuggets in other people's stuff than your own, especially when you're constantly evolving and developing more and more effective and sophisticated models. It's easy to forget the beginner's track.
Yeah, cool.
And that brings us to the end of today's broadcast of Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston. Now, if you'd like to find out more about the products and services Dr. Glenn offers to help you dramatically reduce your cravings and stop overeating in 90 days or less, please visit defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. That's defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. Thanks.